Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ashram Talks. My name is Ambika, and I'm one of the hosts here, joining you live from Toronto, Canada. This evening, we are joined again by Simon Haas. If this is your first time joining us, just a little bit of background about Simon. He is an international author, speaker, and yoga philosophy teacher. He is also currently completing his doctoral studies in the Bhakti tradition at the University of Oxford. So, welcome back, Simon. How is the weather in Costa Rica today? You shared there were some pretty intense storms last time.
Thank you, Ambika. We have rain, but it's not the heavy storm that we had last time,
Oh,
thankfully.
that's a relief. Well, I'm looking forward to your class today. I'm sure folks who are joining us are as well. So, let's dive right in.
I'm really excited to be here. We're covering a very important part of the Gita, which is where Arjuna is about to fall into his dark night of the soul. So I want to welcome all of you for joining us today. And so we're on verses 24 to 26 of chapter 1 and looking at Arjuna's dark night of the soul. So we'll be discussing triggers, what triggers a dark night of the soul, and the 4 signs of a dark night. So as usual, we'll begin with a short auspicious invocation, a Mangalacharanam, following the tradition of ancient India. And this is again a prayer to the teachers in our life. He Shri Guru Jnana Dina Bandho Swanandadatta Karunaika Sindho Brindavanasi Nahitavatara Prasidha Radha Pranaya Prachara. So this opens our small and intimate study group of the Bhagavad Gita. The first chapter of the Gita, as we discussed previously, is about facing crisis, what is known in Sanskrit as vishad. So the kind of experience that plunges us in utter darkness, that tears apart our small human story, and that leaves us in grief, and through which we wonder whether we'll ever be able to find a way out. So that's what Arjuna experiences. In Sanskrit, it's known as vishada or despair. And navigating such an experience in the best way is known as Vishad Yoga, the yoga of crisis. So a little bit about the yoga of crisis. I don't want to, I've mentioned before, I don't want to romanticize the dark night of the soul, the experience of Vishad or despair. It is a very difficult journey. And there's a lot of suffering involved in that, wrapped up in that. So the Bhagavad Gita doesn't teach us, you know how you go to a gym and you might find people who wear a t-shirt that says, what is it, no gain without pain, or something along those lines. The Gita doesn't teach that. Rather, yoga is breaking our connection with suffering. So inevitably, a dark night of the soul, an experience of existential crisis will come upon us, maybe at least once in our life, perhaps more than once. And it will, if we can journey through that experience in the best way, it has the potential to change us, to transform us. So you see, many of the greatest contributions in works of art and literature happened after a dark night experience. We see that also in ancient India. So the Bhagavad Gita arises out of Arjuna's dark night. The Bhagavata Purana, also known as the Srimad Bhagavatam, comes about from such an experience that Vyasadeva experiences. The Ramayana also, Valmiki's Ramayana, he experiences a unexpected moment of deep despair and anguish. And he utters a verse which is imbued with pain, actually, shoka. and that became that form of verse became known as the shloka, which is the verses of the Gita are in that shloka form. But that very metrical form, verse form, comes from an experience of despair. So in India, you even have entire lineages of teacher and student that each have helped the other navigate the dark night of the soul. So you have so Narada's despair leads to Sanat Kumar's profound teachings in the ancient Chandogya Upanishad. Narada in turn had a student named Vyasa, and at the height of his literary accomplishments, Vyasa was consumed by feelings of utter emptiness. And his teacher Narada guides him through that experience. And the result is, as I mentioned, the Bhagavata Purana, a 12-volume work of truly astonishing beauty. And then Narada, in turn, had a student named Valmiki, and his despair led to the Ramayana, one of India's greatest epics, made up of, I think, 24,000 verses. So what are some of the benefits of Vishad, a dark night of the soul? Well, for one thing, by experiencing that kind of difficult situation, we develop empathy for the suffering of others. That's certainly been my own experience. We also will tend to drop the facades that we, like the masks that we live through, the facile personas that we hold on to. So it leads to greater authenticity. It also leads to wisdom in life. It deepens us. And for some, this can be the beginning of our spiritual journey, our journey of yoga, which is what Arjuna experiences. This marks the beginning of his journey into the teachings of yoga that Krishna teaches, that Krishna shares with him in the Bhagavad Gita. So last time I mentioned the triggers will be different. So what throws us, so to speak, into a dark night experience will be different for each of us. The external circumstances may well be different, but there are 4 shared features. Before we turn to those, let's start by looking at the trigger for Arjuna's own dark night of the soul. So this is chapter 1, text 24. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. So, yeah, each word has a lot of meaning, actually, here in these verses of the Gita. So just to give you an example, here Arjuna is being addressed as Gudakesha. Isha is Lord, and Gudaka is sleep. So he's the Lord of sleep. Meaning to say, so Sanjaya is actually saying that although Arjuna will fall into a dark night of the soul, as readers of the Gita or listeners of the Gita, we shouldn't think Arjuna is an ordinary person. And this actually occurs by the will of Krishna so that the Bhagavad Gita is spoken. So he's not experiencing a dark night of the soul actually in the same way as a regular person might, or in the way that Dhritarashtra, the blind emperor, is caught in darkness. There are other details. Arjuna has celestial weapons. So it says here at the very end, Ratotamam. So Rata Uttama means the finest or the best of chariots. So Arjuna actually was given his chariot, gifted his chariot by Agni, the fire god. So Arjuna also has his Gandiva bow and a quiver of arrows that's inexhaustible. So he has celestial weapons. He has what you can call magical weapons. We'll turn now to text 25. So, in the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. So, Krishna drives the chariot in between the 2 armies, vast armies. And you can't see the end of this army. It's so huge. You don't know where the beginning is and where the end is. And it's divided by an area of open battlefield. And Arjuna's chariot is right in between the two armies, and he's looking at who is present on both sides, ready to fight. So one teaching here, okay, let's have a look at another name. We won't look at all of the names. In the West, we tend to have a single name, or perhaps a first name and a surname. But in India, the tradition is to have numerous names. So sometimes like numbering dozens of names. Arjuna has a number of names. One of those is Partha, which means the son of Pritha, or the son of Kunti. So Kunti, the mother of Arjuna, is actually the sister of Vasudeva, Krishna's father. So Krishna and Arjuna are also related. So the reason Krishna is addressing him this way is he's reminding Arjuna. It's an address of affection, as he takes Arjuna, directs his attention to the Kurus assembled on the battlefield. And the next verse, next text, 26. There Arjuna could see, within the midst of the armies of both parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers, all present there. So, in the opposing army, he sees Pitrin, which means fathers or elders, like Burishrava, Pitamahan, grandfathers like Bhishma and Somadatta, Acharyan, teachers like Drona and Kripa, Matulan, maternal uncles like Shalya and Shakuni. So he sees everyone he's grown up with and who's dear to him on both sides of the army. He sees them ready to lay down their lives. And that becomes the trigger for Arjuna's dark night of the soul, as you will see in the next few verses. So a dark night of the soul may have different triggers. Maybe the death of a loved one, the breakup of a relationship, being made unemployed, bankruptcy, illness, domestic violence, even war and displacement. Sometimes an internal crisis may simply creep up on us without even any external friction at all. We sometimes call that a midlife crisis. But either way, the dark night experience is always an inner crisis. There may be external triggers, but the real challenge occurs within. So here with Arjuna requesting Krishna to position his chariot between the two armies, Arjuna sees his family members, elders, and dear friends all willing to face death. And the horror of that, of what is about to unfold, that is the trigger that leads to Arjuna's despair. So let's turn now to the 4 signs that you're in a dark night of the soul. So our dark night is as individual to us as our fingerprint, but there are 4 common features. The first one is suffering associated with the 3 phases of time. So we always experience that as a background condition in life: fear, lamentation, confusion. But in a dark night of the soul, these 3 types of suffering, they feel like unbearable. This brings back memories of my own dark night of the soul. In India, so I lived in India as a monk for many years, and we would sleep just on the stone floor with a straw mat, just on a straw mat. I remember one time in the night, I felt like a sting, and I jumped up in incredible pain, and I looked around, and I couldn't see anything. I was so exhausted that I went back to take some more rest. And 5-6 minutes later, another sharp, painful sting. So I jumped up and I pulled away the straw mat, and there was a millipede, like a large millipede, that swiftly made its way across the room and into the bathroom and into the drain. And I learned that this, I was lucky, that was a baby millipede, because when you get stung by a big one, an adult millipede, there are some in India that are so kind of venomous that the sting is so painful that people have been known to put their arm in boiling water to try and remove the pain. But I remember thinking, when I went through a dark night of the soul sometime after that, I thought I would rather be bitten by a thousand millipedes than go through what I'm going through now. And the reason for that, partly also, is because in like a regular kind of traumatic experience, like say fall off your motorbike, or fall off a ladder, there are outward signs of what you're going through. So you might have broken your arm and you'll have a cast, and people can see that, and they understand that you're in recovery. They understand that you've been through a trauma. But in a dark night of the soul, often, not always, but often there may be no physical symptoms that accompanies what you're experiencing inside. So the others around you cannot understand what it is you're going through. So that really heightens also the experience of fear, lamentation, and confusion. In a dark night of the soul, those three types of sufferings begin to feel unbearable. So Arjuna, he experiences that, and his suffering is so heightened that it has physical symptoms, which he'll tell Krishna about. So look out for those in the coming verses of the Gita in the next few episodes. Arjuna will explain that his skin feels dry. His mind is reeling. The hairs on his body are standing on end. He's not able to remain standing. His bow falls from his hand. And so he'll express the physical symptoms of his dark night of the soul. The next sign of a dark night of the soul, and this is important because then we can know whether, maybe we're in a dark night of the soul now, or, maybe we can look back at past experiences in our life and realize, oh yeah, that was a dark night of the soul. Or we'll be prepared for one that may come to us, as if we see these symptoms, these signs coming our way. So the second sign is the revealing of parts of us that we perhaps don't wish to acknowledge, parts of us that we hide from others, and we maybe don't even wish to acknowledge ourselves. So we might suddenly be confronted with the very difficult realization that we don't really care about others. Or we might come to see how much anger we hold in our heart. And that can be a shocking experience, to be confronted with something like that. So for Arjuna to understand what he goes through, you have to go to the end of the Mahabharata, which is the larger epic in which the Gita is situated. At the end of the Mahabharata, Arjuna and his brothers are going up the Himalayan mountains. And one by one, they fall to the ground. They drop dead to the ground. And Bhima, Arjuna's older brother, asks the eldest, Yudhishthir, why did this happen to Nakula? Why did this happen to Sahadev? What shortcoming did Arjuna have? And Yudhishthir reveals that Arjuna was the greatest warrior of his time, the greatest archer of his time, and he knew it. And that led to pride as an undefeated warrior. And that in turn led him to, how to put it, he would say, he would make warriors boasts that he was not able in every case to keep. So if we come back now to the Battle of Kurukshetra, and Arjuna is about to enter into his dark night of the soul, we spoke earlier about, I mentioned some of the names of Krishna and Arjuna. And so coming back to that topic, Arjuna here in this first chapter, he has many names that speak to his skill as a warrior, his heroism. So he's referred to as holder of the bow. hero of the Kurus, scorcher of the enemy. But what you see here, or what you're about to see in the next few verses, is a complete, those titles become like, there's an irony to the titles. The holder of the bow is no longer able to hold on to his Gandiva bow. The hero of the Kurus is now surrounded by the Kurus, but his heroism has evaporated. Scorcher of the enemy is now being scorched by the enemy of fear, lamentation, and confusion, the three types of suffering associated with time. So you see a complete inversion. And think what Arjuna must be going through, falling into an existential crisis like that, that's so public, in front of those who have for decades humiliated Arjuna and the Pandavas. They have tried to kill them through poisoning and in a fire. They banished them to the forest for 13 years. They went through incredible difficulties, and those warriors those kings who did that to them, to Arjuna and his brothers, are standing on the other side of this battlefield, watching Arjuna have what you can only describe as a very public meltdown. So that's the second sign of a dark night of the soul. So moving now to the third sign. The third sign of a dark night of the soul is a strong impulse to retreat from life. So during a dark night of the soul, we want to hide away. We want to disengage from life. And for Arjuna, that means leaving the battlefield. He says, Krishna, it's better, you'll see in a few verses, he'll say, Krishna, it's better we leave the battlefield. Let's leave Kurukshetra. I don't mind. I will simply live by begging. I'll become a beggar in the forest or in the villages, but I want to leave this place. Now, Kurukshetra, as we discussed in the first episode, in the second episode, that is the field of action. So it's the field of now. So we can never leave the field of action. Krishna says to Arjuna, you cannot stop acting, not even for a moment. So in fact, even when we decide not to act, it has consequences, for better or for worse. So the question, given that we cannot leave the field of action, and that even not acting is a form of action that has enormous consequences, the real question becomes, how can we act skillfully, even amidst chaos and confusion? And this Krishna defines as yoga. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Yoga is skillfulness in actions. Now, that impulse to disengage from life in a dark night of the soul can be so intense that it can even manifest as a desire to take one's own life. So Arjuna, at one point, he'll say, Krishna, it's better that the Kurus strike me down without weapons. In other words, I'll abandon my weapons. Think of Krishna driving the chariot into the Kuru army, no weapons, and let them take me down. So he's expressing a death wish in that moment. So that's the third sign. And the fourth sign is complete helplessness. So in a dark night of the soul, well-meaning friends, family members, they may try to, they'll say things like, think positively, or I don't know, let it go, get over it, choose happiness. But no amount of, I don't know, easy spirituality or pop psychology will help us. We have the will, but we don't have the power. So remember, Arjuna has had the very best of teachers. But in a dark night of the soul, whatever he knows, like intellectually, that's not able to help him. That's why in chapter 13 of the Gita, and I'm very excited, looking forward to some of these incredible chapters later in the Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna a very unusual question. He says, Krishna, what is knowledge? And it's surprising because we think we know what knowledge is. Knowledge is what you've learned and committed to memory, and you can articulate it perhaps. And Krishna's response is even more surprising than Arjuna's question. Arjuna asks the question because he has a lot of knowledge, but none of that was able to help him in the dark night of the soul, intellectual learning. So when he asks the question, Krishna says, knowledge is, and he lists qualities like truth, discipline, kindness to others. And he lists a whole set of incredible virtues. He says that is knowledge, all else is ajnana, the absence of knowledge. So we see here that the Gita is not about information, it's about transformation. And Arjuna is about to go through this incredible transformation that is the dark night of the soul, which Krishna, his close friend, takes him through. And so we see in the world of, in the natural world, we see certain animals go through a physical transformation, like serpents shed their skin, or you have caterpillars that enter into a cocoon stage, and their entire body becomes, all of their DNA becomes disintegrates into some kind of a stew, so to speak. They they lose every part of the caterpillar body, becomes falls away in the cocoon stage, and the caterpillar has no idea what will happen to it. But when it comes out of that process, then it's one of nature's most greatest beauties, the butterfly, full of color. And now it's no longer looking for poisonous milkweed, it's searching for nectar. So humans don't go through a physical transformation, but we go through a spiritual metamorphosis. And we may go through more than one, and that is the dark night of the soul. So I want to invite you to think about difficult experiences that you've been through, or perhaps are going through now, and think, what was the trigger of that? And how did that unfold? In what ways did these four features, these four signs of a dark night of the soul emerge? So the first one being fear, lamentation, and confusion. Which of those three was dominant? Was, if one of them was more intense than the others? And how did that manifest in that experience? How did fear, or perhaps lamentation, manifest in your life in that crisis experience? And the second sign of a dark night of the soul is parts of us that we perhaps don't wish to acknowledge, that we're faced with maybe for the first time. What were those in your life? And how did you try to disengage from life, to resist or avoid that particular experience of crisis? So think about the four signs of a dark night of the soul, and maybe consider how those manifested in your experience. All dark nights of the soul are different from each other, but they have something in common, which is that they're all an experience of intense inner difficulty, inner crisis, and they have these four shared features. So we'll stop here. I just want to say also that dark night of the souls don't only happen to individuals, they can happen to whole societies. Whole societies can go through a dark night of the soul. And according to the sacred texts of India, we're currently in a global dark night, which is known as Kali Yuga, an age of darkness and crisis. As a society, in many ways, we've lost our way. Our sense of meaning is shattered. And the great commentator, Sri Madhvacharya, explains that Duryodhana actually symbolizes Kali Yuga, the societal dark night of the soul. And this battlefield dialogue happens at the onset of Kali Yuga, known as Yuga Sandhi, the point of transition of one age to another. And therefore, Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita are especially meant for this present age of darkness and despair.
Wow, thank you, Simon, for sharing your insights again with us today. And although we don't have a question live right now, I did have a quick one. Um, because it is the second time in recent classes that we've heard about this differentiation between knowing something intellectually versus experiencing or realizing something. And I just wanted to see if maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Right. Yeah, that is a great question, and um, we see that especially in the Bhagavad Gita. We see that in the difference between Dhritarashtra, who remains unchanged after hearing the same Bhagavad Gita, the same yoga teachings, and Arjuna, who's completely transformed.
Mhm.
So um, it's it, it's not difficult to be able to learn uh, teachings, sacred teachings. And you can read about them in texts, we can hear about them, we can even learn to repeat them. But the real question becomes, are we embodying them in our own life? And to the degree that we're embodying them in our own life, we're a practitioner we're a yogi or a yogini. And so, what I love about the Bhagavad Gita is that it encourages us to um, take the wisdom teachings, the sacred teachings of the text, and begin applying them in our everyday life and seeing to what extent are we actually living this. And a good place to do that is in a time of difficulty. So when everything is going well, we can appear very wise. It's in moments of difficulty that that's tested. And also we have a chance to deepen that. So Kurukshetra is a battlefield, and life can be like that sometimes, or it can feel like that. It can feel chaotic and difficult. We can have like a disagreement with colleagues or a disagreement with our partner or family members. How do we then, what does that do to us? Does it throw us off our practice? Are we able to navigate that in a way, in the best way? So we can then begin seeing how well we do, even in moments of moments that are a little more challenging. It doesn't even have to be like a full dark night of the soul. Even in the small challenges of everyday life, the experience of a Monday at work, we can see, we can see whether we're able to navigate that in a way that is um, that's part of our practice of yoga.
Hmm. Yeah, so much there to reflect on. Um, and we will be continuing our study of the Bhagavad Gita. So if there are more questions that you have from any of these classes that you've seen so far, you can comment on the YouTube videos, or you can also send us a message either on Instagram at Ashram Talks ENG, or again, you can leave us a comment on one of these videos, and we
Mhm.
will our speakers will cover them in a subsequent class. If you felt inspired by what you heard today, please go ahead and give this video a like, and you can also subscribe to get notifications of our upcoming classes. Thank you again, everyone, so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.